Hello, neighbors. My name is Matthew Dobler. I'm sure you know by this point that I'm the president of the Aleppo Township Board of Commissioners, and I'm also the chair of our communications committee. One thing that I never really understood before I got in local government was the ways the different levels of government work together and how they all fit in together. But as your representative, I've had access to some of the other people in the local, state, and federal government, and I've had an opportunity to ask them questions about what they do and how they affect us as residents in Aleppo. So I'm joined today by some legal leaders in our local government, our county government, and our goal is to focus on Allegheny County and try to help you understand how that level of government affects your life here in Aleppo. So with me today on my immediate right is Allegheny County Councilman Tom Baker, and he represents Aleppo residents on the Allegheny County Council. Now, I can tell you that getting to know Councilman Baker has been one of the true joys of my service to Aleppo. He's a great resource for all of us, and I don't mind saying that sometimes when I go to government or political events, they're a drag. But when I see Councilman Baker there, my face lights up because I know I'm going to have a good time, and I know I've got somebody that I can talk to. So
thanks,
welcome.
Thank you very much. That's very nice of you.
Also joining us directly to Councilman Baker's right is Kurt Emmerling. He is the Deputy Administrator of the Area Agency on Aging. And I had to practice saying that a few times before I got here because I thought that might be a tongue twister. Area Agency on Aging. And then immediately to Kurt's right is Dr. Karen Hacker, who is the director of the Allegheny County Health Department. And I don't have anything witty or funny to say about the Allegheny County Health Department, except
I suppose I should be pleased with that.
That's right. That's good. Well, thank you all for being here today. I think we discussed before we started recording that we were just going to sort of do a question and answer, but I suspect what we're going to do in the next little bit here is going to be a bit of a hodgepodge. So we're just going to kind of shoot at it. Councilman Baker, I guess my first question will be to you, and it's a broad question.
Sure.
What happens at the Allegheny County level? What is the Allegheny County Council, and how does it all work?
Sure. So we have a home rule charter here in Allegheny County. So back in the late 90s, we became home rule charter, and we have 15 council members, and we're elected by district. So the 13 of us that are elected by district each represent about 100,000 constituents in Allegheny County. Aleppo is part of District 1. We're number 1, so we're very happy about that. But it's a broad district. It covers the North Hills, the airport area, 65. It really has a broad span of Allegheny County here within District 1. But all 13 of us represent about 100,000 people. There are 2 members at large. So while I'm your county councilman here in Aleppo, we also have Sam DeMarco, who is from North Fayette, and he is councilman at large, as is John DeFazio, who is also the president of council. So every community in Allegheny County truly has 3 council members that represent them. Their person right for where they live, and then also the 2 at-large members that work with them. We're the other branch of government from the county executive. Many of the folks watching the video probably know Rich Fitzgerald, the county executive. So we are the other branch of government and work together with the county executive to pass good government and make sure that we have a solid budget here every year. We're proposing not to have a tax increase this year for property taxes, which is a good thing. We're keeping the millage the same, and we'll have an $880 million budget with no tax increase. And I think in a time where people, especially last year, but a little bit too moving forward, when the state budget didn't get passed on time, people are worried with federal concerns. We, as a county government, are able to get things done in a bipartisan fashion with an on-time balanced budget without a tax increase. So a lot of positive things going on within Allegheny County.
Good. So if I go back to my everything I know about civics I learned in middle school, I think, I know the 3 branches of government: executive, legislative, and judicial. Mm-hmm. And so you're saying that Rich is obviously executive. That's convenient. It's built right into his title there. Right. And that makes you the legislative branch?
We're the legislative branch, yeah. And I mean, we do oversee as a county the court systems as well, but that's different. But yeah, there's the county council and then the county executive. We have Dr. Hacker here with us today. The public health board will come out with a recommendation ordinance, and it'll come to county council. Everything that we do still does need the county executive's approval, though, in the end.
As it does at all levels, right?
Right,
I mean,
correct.
Exactly the same as we know with Congress and the president.
Right, yes.
So I know federal laws. I know state laws. Unfortunately, I know more about ordinances than I want to, local municipal ordinances. There are county laws as well.
So there's the ordinances. Some of the ones that we've been working on in the last few years, there was related to restaurant grading that was defeated at the county council level. We have approved for there to be drilling in parks in Deer Lakes Park. That was a more contentious issue. Issues related to policing and Wilberding. That was a pretty interesting issue throughout the last few years. We've had things related to taxes as well and real estate. It's such a broad range of issues that we cover within county government, but it always keeps it interesting. And the different committees that we get to serve on, I get to work with Health and Human Services. We had a really good meeting the other night. We're all on appointment review, education, public safety, and then economic development. So anything related to TIFs and helping with real estate and with economic development here in the county, we get to work with that as well.
Gotcha. How frequently does the Allegheny County Council meet?
We meet twice a month in person. It's every other Tuesday, and we'd love to have folks from Aleppo come down and visit us. We need to get you down there sometime soon as well. So we meet in person twice a month, in person down there. We do have a lot of committee meetings as well. And then a lot of the work is really done. I should mention we are a part-time legislature, so we all have our regular full-time jobs. So, even during the day, you can be helping constituents, and we do have a staff for county council that can help constituents as well during the day. But I think that's the thing I love about it, Commissioner, is that every day you get to help somebody with some issue of theirs. And a lot of times it is roads and bridges and those kind of public works type issues, but there truly is a way to help your constituents every day. And that's what I love about this role.
Good. So you said you have a full-time job. What's your full-time
Sure.
job?
So I'm the Chief Community Affairs Officer for Big Brothers Big Sisters of Greater Pittsburgh. Yeah. So I've been a Big since the month that I graduated from college 15 years ago. My little brother Preston was 10 back then. He's now 25 and got to be there for 5th grade graduation, high school graduation, and he was the first person in his family to go and to graduate from college. So to get to be his Big for these last 15 years has been incredible. I have 2 other little brothers, Eric, E-Robs. We were out playing basketball last night till about 9 o'clock at the Thelma Levitt Y. So being his Big for these last 7 has been great. And then I have another little brother named EJ, who's excellent. He's a 9th grader playing high school football at Brashear. And just to get to be a friend and a mentor and a role model to those 3 guys over these last 15 years has been incredible.
That's terrific.
We got a good program. I will say for folks in Aleppo watching, we always need more volunteers, particularly male volunteers, but we need all volunteers to get involved with Big Brothers Big Sisters. So anyone that's maybe watching these terrific videos that you put together, Matt, we'd really appreciate their interest in Big Brothers Big Sisters as well.
Well, that's terrific.
Thanks. Thank you.
All right. So let's talk about Aleppo and Aleppo and Allegheny County. And if the answer is no, that's fine. The answer is no. But are there issues right now pending at the county level that you think are especially important to Aleppo residents?
It's a good question. I mean, I do think that we're going to have some legislation coming our way regarding e-vaping real soon and vaping really soon. So that's coming down the pike, and that's something that I'm sure Dr. Hacker can cover a little bit better in her segment with you. It's past her board. It'll be coming to county council here in the next few months. That might be something that would be of interest to Aleppo residents. I think just in general, the fact that we keep taxes the same and don't raise Aleppo residents' taxes is certainly important. I just appreciate being at your events here in Aleppo, and I will say that the Fall Fest this summer or late summer into the fall was fantastic, and got to judge the wing contest. My wife was worried on our way to Aleppo that day that I was going to be in a wing eating contest. From a public health perspective, that would not have been good to be in a wing eating contest, but the head of catering and the head of food services at the Masonic Village there was nice enough to let me judge the wing contest at the Fall Festival. So that was great. And you guys really had a terrific debate here in Aleppo a couple weeks ago. You had Congressman Rothfuss.
I don't think it was a debate.
Oh, it was
a meet the candidates.
It was a meet the candidates night. That's true.
Speak on behalf of the
Rod Gardner. That's true. Yeah, Rod Gardner and Lanny Gardner, who are good friends. They did a great job. And you're right. It was not a debate. It was a meet the candidates night because Congressman Rothfuss shared his vision for 8 or 9 minutes. Aaron McClellan did. Senator Reschenthaler, Ed Eichenlob. They all shared for, I think it was 8 or 9 minutes, and they all stayed on point. It was great. Yeah, good point. It was definitely a meet the candidates night, not a debate here in Aleppo, but great crowd. I will say so many folks came out from Aleppo for that, and also the Fall Fest. The Fall Fest had a great crowd, and I ended up walking away that day. There was an incredible craft fair, so everyone was hanging out, spending time together, and there was a craft fair. And I was going to a Steelers-themed wedding that night. It was a football-themed wedding, and I picked up 2 Steelers ties at the Aleppo Fall Festival, which was really helpful because you had to wear Steelers gear to this wedding, and I got a couple of Steelers ties at your event right here in Aleppo, so it was very helpful.
Good.
Yeah, and just it was a great sense of community, and from everything I've been to at Aleppo over the years, now becoming friends and colleagues with you, and with the gardeners as well. There's so many great things going on here in Aleppo Township to be proud of.
Well, thank you. That's nice of you to say.
And I should say too, I should mention these videos, I think, are an incredible resource. I represent 14 communities throughout Allegheny County. And when you send these videos after each one of your commissioner meetings, I think it's really helpful. And I was mentioning to Kurt and Dr. Hacker earlier that I think it's really helpful is that you break it down issue by issue so that residents and so that viewers can really see what you're talking about, what you're discussing, what you're voting on. And maybe folks don't have to watch an hour and a half long video. They can really see that maybe 7 to 10 minutes that they're a little bit more concerned about.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And that's something that I was going to touch on later, but since you brought it up, let's talk about it now. I want to make sure that Aleppo residents understand that the digests of our meetings that we send, they go not only to you, and we know we've talked before about them going to the press, but our higher elected officials are also on the distribution list for those. Mm-hmm. And what I think is valuable about those digests and those emails that go out is that our county, state, and federal legislature elected officials are reading those. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I guess my question to you would be, do you find them helpful? Is it something that makes it so that you can keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on in Aleppo, or is that just a pipe dream of mine?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point. I think us as elected officials from the county level or the state level, I mean, we really do appreciate it. And the fact that you can watch it in shorter clips, I think is really helpful. That way you're not watching a full hour and a half, 2 hour meeting. So the smaller clips really do help. And yeah, I mean, I definitely stay abreast of what's going on in all 14 communities. But I will say what you're doing in Aleppo probably makes it just about the easiest out of any of the 14 to really stay abreast of what's going on in Aleppo.
Right. We assume when we're putting those together, we assume that we have about 90 seconds of everybody's attention. So if we have 90 seconds of your attention twice a month, hey,
I appreciate you.
We're happy with that.
Very good.
Well, then let me take it the other way. What types of feedback from Aleppo residents are you, as our elected official, looking to get? When do you want Aleppo residents to pick up the phone or to email you? Mm-hmm. How do you want it, and what do you want?
Yeah, I mean, anytime, to be honest, a lot of it's constituent services. So if they need help with anything related to the county government, if that's parks, if it's public safety, if it's the police, if it's the health department, whatever it is related to what is concerning them or just that they're interested in, I mean, anything related to that, that's when I want them to reach out to me. So it doesn't always have to be just when there's a hot button issue that comes up, and they can email, they can call, whatever is the best way. They can stop down and visit. They can come to a council meeting. Would love to host them down at a county council meeting as well. Whatever's easiest for them is honestly great. So it can be when those hot button issues come up, but it can also just be on a regular basis. Rod Gardner, who is an incredible leader here in Aleppo, he's your predecessor as the president of the commissioners. He actually is in an interesting spot. He was an elected official twice in District 1. He was an elected official in Moon and also in Aleppo, which is pretty incredible. And him and Lanny are just a great team. Rod lets me know, and you let me know now what's going on and what we can help with. So Great. As long as the elected officials are doing it, but also just any citizen that lives here in Aleppo, they're always welcome to please let me know what they're thinking about issues related to the county government.
Right. And here again, I can personally attest, Councilman Baker is very good with his email. So I know some higher officials, it's a little more difficult to get directly through to them. But if you have an issue with Allegheny County, I can guarantee you that if you send an email to Councilman Baker, you'll hear back from him.
Oh, thanks, man.
Well, you mentioned parks, police, public health. We're going to talk about in a second. I mean, obviously, to us, when I spoke with our manager yesterday and sort of talked about us having this meeting, she said, well, we talked to the county a lot about roads and public works. And beyond that, there's really not a whole lot of interaction. So I guess my question would be, try, if you can, to tell me specifically things that should be lighting a light in people's head and saying that's Allegheny County, as opposed to calling the local manager or going to the state. Right. So we talk about
roads are a good start. Yeah. I will say, I mean, roads, there was 50 miles of road. The county oversees a lot of miles of roads here in Allegheny County. So 50 miles actually got done this summer, which was, I guess, in recent times, Director Shanley said a record-breaking year, which is good. So anything related to roads, where it's Allegheny County roads, we're definitely happy to help. We have a lot of great things going on within our parks, and we've got some park's obviously pretty close to Aleppo. So if it's Settlers, if it's North Park, whatever it is. And
Well, let's say those. It's Settlers Park, right,
Yeah.
over in Moon.
Right.
North Park, up 79 a ways. What else is nearby?
Those would be the main
main
two.
two,
Yeah.
yeah.
For here. Yeah. I mean, one thing that's going on now, we do have it's a 9-part series of 5Ks going on in the park. So I'll be at Settlers just in a couple weeks from now with the county executive. He's letting me shoot off the gun to start the race, which I think, we're doing it together, I guess, which should be fun. So that's so there are races in the parks. There's also park rangers now. That's a change that we made while I was on council, actually, and getting some of the police officers in the communities and having the park rangers who can provide some enrichment and programming, but also keep the park safe in the park. So that's been a good switch these last few years as well, too, to get more police into the communities and get these park rangers into the park. So that's going well. I mean, as the holidays are here too, I mean, people like to ski, people like to snow. So we'll have a lot of good things going on at Boyce and throughout the community as well too. So
Boyce Park, also a county park.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think a lot of times people don't realize how many ways throughout just the course of a week that the county actually affects your life. I mean, it can be through that. I mean, through properties as well too. So we do a lot within economic development, making sure that we're attracting business here. I will say there's a lot of just really, really good things going on within that, with all of Bob Hurley's work and his team, just to make sure that we're attracting business here, that we're making a vibrant place. And even some of the success I will say that you see in Beaver, certainly I think the county executive and a lot of the leaders in Allegheny County played a role in making sure that the cracker plant, the Shell cracker plant, is coming to Beaver, which is going to be good for jobs. I'm on the board of Visit Pittsburgh, so we want heads in beds. We want people staying in our region, spending money in our region. So I think there's a lot of vibrancy within that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I can say that I grew up in Osborne, so basically in the Swickley area.
Yeah.
Grew up here. Other than 10 years that I spent on a sojourn, that's the entire time.
I think in New York, right?
In New York, yeah, right. And I never once visited a state park, visited a county park. Never once. And then I had kids, and we started going to. We went hiking in North Park. Right. We went hiking in the one in Moon. Mm-hmm. We just what did you just say?
Settlers. Yeah.
Settlers. We went to some of the state parks around, and I think it is such an underutilized resource. I think it's crazy when you look at people and you say, you realize you're paying for this. You're paying for this, and there's significant developments. There's significant projects, and you're not using it. I don't understand. Right. That's like saying, well, I'm paying for this road to be built. I'm paying for this bridge to be built, but I'm not going to drive on it.
Right. It's pretty amazing. Just all the resource. I mean, so looking at North Park, my wife and I ended up there twice last weekend. We ran a 5K for North Hills. We had some students raising money from North Hills High School for Make-A-Wish, which was incredible. So there was a 5K there on Sunday. And then on Saturday, we sometimes we go kayaking. My wife loves when we go kayaking, but we did not go kayaking. We went to OTB, which was a really good example of a public-private partnership where the private sector worked with the county and got this restaurant, OTB, right in North Park. And people love it. It's very hard to get a table there. Yeah. So that's a really good example of, just something positive that's happened in the last couple of years as well. So there's always something to do at Settlers, always something going on at North Park. We think that the park rangers are helping with that. Yeah. But like you're saying, unless you are thinking about it all the time and strategically planning to go to the park, people sometimes don't go to the park. Yeah. The good thing that I see is that it is generally pretty crowded at our parks, which is really, really fantastic. We also did, I should mention another 5K close by in Moon at the airport that we had a couple of weeks ago. It was the flyby 5K and 10K. And it was really fantastic. So we're really trying to get people out there, try to get them healthy. Dr. Hacker has been an incredible leader with the Live Well program. We in communities can become Live Well.
Don't spoil us. We're going to talk about Live Well later.
I'm really proud. She's doing an amazing job with it. And that's something we'll talk about later. But yeah, I think Aleppo hopefully is going to be on that short list to become one of the next Live Well communities.
Good. Well, I want to get to the other two folks that are here involved. But before I pass the mic off of you, a tough question.
Yes.
One thing that you wish Aleppo residents knew about the county that you think they don't?
That's interesting. I think it's that we're here and we want to help. I think even just with being a part-time legislature, I think a lot of times people don't even know who their county council member is. They probably know who their state rep is and their state senator because they have 3 full-time staff members and it's their full-time job and they're able to be everywhere and they do a really good job at that. But I think for us as a part-time legislature, I think sometimes there can be a level of disconnect. We want to be everywhere. We want to be spending time with everyone. So just the more that they can invite us to things and ask us questions and email and call, I think the better off we'll all be, because we all ran for these offices because we want to do a good job. And the more that we can just keep in touch with each other, the better off we'll be. So as there's things going on in Aleppo, I think your township manager and Rod Gardner and you are doing a really good job at engaging us. But for any citizen that has anything going on in Aleppo that they'd like us just to be at or support in any possible way, please just to let us know.
Good. Well, I hope that you being here today, and I know it will be, because I know our relationship together is good, but I hope that you being here today is a start of us seeing your face a lot and people starting to get annoyed with Tom Baker being around.
Get tired of seeing us. Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, thanks,
Commissioner. Good. All right, so Dr. Hacker, let's turn to public health. And let me ask the most ridiculously broad question. I know what the word public means, and I know what the word health means, but you put them together, and I have a harder time conceptualizing of what's happening with public health. So tell me, what is public health? What are you looking to do?
So first of all, I want to say, I think the reason people don't think about public health is because generally if we're doing our job, there's no problems.
Okay.
It's when something happens, like there's a problem with the water supply, or there's, some other kind of issue that people recognize all the work that's being done behind the scenes. Public health has a very broad responsibility, which is to protect and promote the health of the public. So that can range from, making sure that the enforcement side of our world is taken care of, like our restaurants are being inspected and our air quality is being monitored and our homes are safe and healthy. We don't have health issues going on there. We actually even do all of the plumbing inspections for pretty much the majority of Allegheny County, and I'm sure most residents have no idea that that's part of our responsibility. We oversee to some extent the public drinking water, recycling, solid waste management. I mean, it goes down the line. So, and then in addition to all of those types of things, we also have a laboratory. We have a whole lot of initiatives that are focused on chronic disease and preventing smoking, enhancing public physical activity, decreasing obesity, those kinds of things. We have the big Live Well Allegheny campaign. And we also do a lot around statistics and data. We are the organization that keeps all of the vital statistics in terms of birth data, death data, and is able to use that data to really understand where are the problem spots in our county. And when things get bad in certain areas that are health related, we often have to, in a very flexible and acute manner, rise to the occasion to really be able to work on those issues. One of those issues right now is what's going on with opioids and overdoses in our county, which just keeps going up. And so we're very involved in that as well. But talk about diversity in terms of my life. A day doesn't go by where a new issue doesn't come up on my radar screen that I'm dealing with. Whether it's a particular new and emerging disease, I'm sure everybody has heard about Zika. Prior to that, we were talking about Ebola. Just in the news yesterday was Legionella. So, there's always something else. We do all of the disease investigations. So if there is an outbreak, whether it's in a restaurant or whether we have an outbreak of some kind of a new emerging, could be measles coming back, we're the organization that goes out and finds out what's going on. One of my big issues recently happens to be rabies. Who would have guessed that rabies is actually a problem in Allegheny County? And we seem to have almost a weekly scenario where some animal is found to actually have rabies. So we've been doing baiting for animals with vaccine to try to keep the rabies down. And my understanding is that we at least have not let it spread into Ohio, and now the objective is to push it back. So very, very broad responsibilities. And unfortunately, of course, and they'll say this as the councilman is here, we never have enough resources to do all the things that we would like to be doing.
Well, that's why he's keeping taxes down, right? Well, so you touched, and thank you. That's a great broad overview. You touched on a couple things that just sort of in Aleppo perked up my ears. The first is opioids. We had an unfortunate overdose here not long ago. So I guess my question is, and I know this is a topic that could be its own video, and I think it will be its own video at some point. But what to do? What can we do?
So the entire nation is really struggling with this issue right now, but I would tell you that it really seems to have started more on the Eastern Seaboard, where they've been dealing with these issues for over 10 years and then sort of migrated So Pennsylvania, to some extent, is a little bit behind in our efforts. As you probably know, the governor's office has been doing a lot with the legislator in terms of this area. We believe that the reason we've had such an unbelievable uptick in the use of heroin and opioids is because around 2000, there were some new drugs that came on the market. They were heavily marketed as not being addictive. In fact, they were quite addictive.
You're speaking of prescription drugs.
Yes. And I think doctors were really trying to get ahead of pain. And so they were very, their level of prescribing really went up a tremendous amount. But simultaneously, the cost of heroin was actually coming down. And as people found themselves addicted to some of these painkillers, we do believe that they then transitioned to heroin because it was a lot cheaper. Now, with all of that said, the challenge is now is to how do we, number one, keep people from getting addicted? And so there's a lot of efforts going on to decrease the number of opioids that are being prescribed. And I think they will be very successful. We're hearing about it from our large delivery systems. They're all really ratcheting down the number of prescriptions. There was just a bill passed recently that would actually limit the number of opioids one could get in the emergency room. I do want to mention that people with cancer are sort of a slightly different group of people and often excluded from this discussion of decreasing the opioid available to an individual. The second thing is that we have to make sure that people don't die, literally. And so we put a lot of our energies into trying to get the drug naloxone, which reverses overdoses, out there. We would really like police departments.
That's the nasal drug?
It's the nasal drug.
Yep.
It immediately reverses the impact of an opioid in terms of an overdose. Wakes a person up just like boom.
Right.
You know?
And I think just to interrupt and sort of tie this all together, at our last legislative meeting, Chief Miklos told us that Ohio Township Police Department, who's the police department that serves Aleppo, has recently started carrying that and was telling us some amazing stories about how sharp the reaction to that is.
I'm very glad to hear that they're doing it. One of our challenges is there's no place to report this. So we're constantly trying to figure out how many of our over 100 police departments in our county are actually carrying it. Our EMS also carries it, and some of our fire departments are starting to carry it. And we're trying to get the pharmacies, because there's now some standing orders which would allow you to go into a pharmacy without a prescription and get naloxone. So the whole point being trying to get it out there so that people have it available just in case. Now that said, we call that a harm reduction strategy. It doesn't cure someone of their addiction. It just keeps them alive. And as a colleague of mine said, if you're a corpse, you cannot recover. So we're trying to keep people alive so that they can get into treatment. But for many of us, the challenges of getting people into treatment are also great. And we've been working very closely with our colleagues at the Department of Human Services because they have the platform around treatment. They're the organization that contracts with treatment organizations. And we do feel that there are a lot of things that could be done in the treatment realm that will improve the situation. Number one is we would really ultimately like to see treatment on demand. And that means when a person says, I'm ready to get treatment
on demand.
On demand. That means when you're ready to get treatment, you can get it. What we do know about this disease is that it is incredibly compelling for individuals who are addicted to keep getting their drug. And when given an opportunity, like an evening, like you say, I want to get straight, and then you can't find them a bed or you can't find them a program, they literally might go out that night and overdose. And we've actually seen that happen. So how do we get people into programs which provide them with a whole variety of treatment options? There's the abstinence strategies that have been around for a long time, and now the new strategies include what we call medication-assisted treatment. That includes methadone, that includes another drug called buprenorphine, and another drug called Vivitrol. And all of these can help an individual, not immediately, but over time with the addition of counseling to really get off of these drugs. We've got to look at addiction as sort of a chronic disease, just like we think about diabetes. And that it's going to take a lot because at this point in time, we have a lot of people who are addicted.
So let me ask you, I hope there's not. I don't know that I know my township well enough to be able to tell you whether there are or there aren't. But again, we had an overdose recently. So if there are people at home who are watching and have a loved one that they're concerned about, is your agency a good place for them to start with a phone call?
Well, they certainly can start. We can at least guide them to where they could get. I would say probably need to have some naloxone around. just in case. But then the issue is being able to educate yourself about what the treatment options are. Now, it is important to recognize that if an individual is over the age of 18 and they're coherent, they still decide for themselves. You cannot force them into treatment. It's interesting, in some states, they've actually now started to look at legislation that allows you to essentially force an individual into treatment.
Commit somebody, yeah.
We do not have that in Pennsylvania. A friend of mine was just in Kentucky where they do have it, and they were saying that it's really helped them a lot. You know, I'm not a one to force people to do things, but I do feel that that must be very challenging for families when they see one of their children, one of their friends' children who's now 18, 19, 20, 25. And we do have this, a lot of this is addiction and overdoses are happening in that 25 to 35-year-old age range. And then feeling so helpless that you can't do anything. You know, what can I do to really help this individual? And the nature of addiction is that it's a terrible denial. People deny that they don't have a problem, but also they're seeking that drug and they will do anything to get the drug. And that means stealing from their family members, telling them things that are not true, but you know, allows them to get what they need. You know, oh yes, I'm really going to AA, but in fact, you know, they're out partying with their friends. I mean, just all kinds of things. And I think that's very, very frustrating. The other thing I will also mention is one of the sources of opioids is our own medicine cabinets. You go to the dentist and you get a prescription, you use 2 of it, what do you do with it? You put it in your medicine cabinet. And we have heard lots of stories about people having individuals in their house for a party or for work or whatever, and then seeing their medicine cabinets cleaned out. Many of the police departments, and I don't know.
Ohio Township is, go ahead.
The drug take back.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that I think people can do is get it out of your house and get it to your drug take back.
And so let's explain exactly what that is. That's if you have leftover medication in your medicine cabinet, you can take it either to the Ohio Township Police Department. Now that's obviously it's not in Aleppo. I believe the Sewickley Police Department, which might be a little closer for something like this, is also a drug take back facility. So if you take it there, they'll safely dispose of it.
We don't really want people throwing it down their toilets, but because of our water supply, obviously. But now that we have a lot more of these options for take back, that's another place to think about. The other thing is I think people need to understand what these drugs do. They need to be aware when they go to the doctor's office. They need to tell the doctor whether they want the prescription for 30 or whether they can get away with, when you go to get your tooth pulled or something like that, most people can manage the pain with what we call, NSAIDs or aspirin or something like that. If they can take it, ibuprofen, those kinds of things. And they don't really need to get Vicodin or Percocets or something like that.
Right.
So I think we as consumers also need to understand how difficult these medications can be and how addictive they can be, particularly if you have a strong family history of addiction or if you've had your own experiences with addiction, and that could be with alcohol as well. And that's why I would say before, the prevention aspect of this is really having people understand the slippery slope. And so it would be much easier to keep people from getting addicted than to treat them once they are addicted. And I think that I would say as a physician, we need to do a much better job of screening individuals. I also think though, as consumers, we need to be smarter about what we choose in terms of the options for us.
Well, it's a sad but important conversation, and as I said, I'm sure we could talk about this for hours. I don't want to let it monopolize our time here today. But as I also said, the police department and I have talked about doing a separate one of these videos. So maybe we'll have you back and we talk just about opioids.
We're spending a lot of time in this.
Good. Well, I appreciate that. I think it's as I said, I sit also as the chair of the public safety committee here in Aleppo, and when we look around at our very few public safety problems, this is one that we know it's there, even in Aleppo, which is a relatively safe community. We know it's there, and it's hard to get your arms around. So I appreciate having somebody to help us struggle with it. But let me touch on the second topic that you mentioned, and I don't know if you're going to have an answer to this or not. But one of the swirling issues in Aleppo that always comes up is water. water and sewage. Our rates are high and getting higher. And again, as somebody who got elected to office as an outsider and is always looking to say, what don't you know? I don't think I think everybody takes for granted that they're going to turn on the water and it's going to be clean. And then you hear these stories nationwide about water levels and
Talk about lead.
lead. Yeah. But the question always comes up, well, why are we paying so much for something and it's not safe? And my response is, no, don't worry about it. We get Westview water. It's delicious and it's safe, but I don't really know that. Tell us about the safety of our water.
So the safety of our water is basically pretty good. People have been hearing about, particularly in the Pittsburgh region that is covered by PWSA, that their lead levels have been creeping upwards. A lot of this has to do with the infrastructure, which is pretty old and may have lead solder. And so depending on the chemicals that are used within the water system, and everyone should know there are chemicals in the water system that coat the pipes. And depending on how well they're doing that, there may be leaching coming out of it. The other issue, though, is not just what your water authorities and your infrastructure looks like, it's also what's your house look like. And as you probably know, in Allegheny County, we have a lot of old housing stock. 80% of our homes were built before the 1978 time when lead paint was actually eliminated. So the challenges that we have both in the pipes that are potentially coming into an individual's home that could also be potentially leaching. But more importantly, and from the lead perspective, I know everyone's worried about the water, but honestly, the biggest problem is the paint. We still have, as I mentioned, all of these homes that were built before paint was lead-free. And as a result of that, when you do restoration in your home, when you do renovation and you mobilize that lead paint and the dust is there, it gets all over it, particularly for children who are crawling around. If your house is dilapidated and falling apart, and we know the areas of our county where we really have a higher lead levels in children's blood and higher risk of having those kinds of things are in those areas where the housing in particular is fairly dilapidated. There may be problems with housing, and it's that dust. So while the water may be creeping up a little bit, realistically, the bigger issue is from the paint. There are some simple things people can do, and I don't know as much about the water authority that deals with Aleppo as I do with some of the larger water authorities, but most of them will test your water for free. You can call them up and you can say, I'd like to have my water tested. If they won't, there are some simple tests people can purchase. I think most of the big, box stores will sell those and have it sent off. The other thing is if you just let your water run for like 30 seconds when you put it on in the morning, you clear those pipes out, you clear the flow. It's really when it's sitting in those pipes overnight. There are also filters that are available that'll clear about 95% of the lead out of the water. So if that is a concern that people have, there are some simple things they can do. Similarly, in your house, if you have lead paint, which, as I said, unless you have a brand new house, it's pretty generally you probably will have it. It's pretty sure you have it. There are some simple things you can do. You don't have to take everything out and have it stripped. You can literally paint over areas where there's chipping and it'll seal it right in. And as I said, all the paint now is completely lead-free. There are common household cleaners that you can use in your windows to clean it out. They'll bring that lead out. You can take your children's toys if they're crawling around on the floor and put them in the dishwasher and clean them. And all those things will really make a big difference. The other thing is, if you think you've had any exposure, your children have had any exposure, the insurance companies will pay for a lead test. So it's a simple thing. Go in, they do a little finger prick on the child, or they'll take blood out of their arm and you can get that information. And I personally really advise people living in our county to have their children tested regardless, because we do have such a high level of housing stock as I said, the time that lead was eliminated.
Have them tested if you think there's been exposure.
No, I would have them tested. I come from a state where everybody was tested because we had so many our housing stock was so old, and I would say the same thing here. And we're actually looking at a policy that all children would be tested as the guidelines for the American Academy of Pediatrics.
At what ages?
9 to 12 months, and again at 24 months.
Okay, and have them tested at their PCP? Interesting.
Yep.
Okay.
You know, I think some people will just ask questions like, do you live in a house that was built more recently? But because of the volume of housing stock in our county, we think everyone should be tested. It's a simple thing to do. And the only good lead ultimately in your child is none. So we think it's a good thing to do.
Well, that's interesting. Interesting. Thank you. All right. So we were talking a little bit about public health at large before we went off on some very good tangents. Tell me, what are the bureaus in the Allegheny County Health Department that sort of guide all these different big picture topics?
A whole environmental health bureau, and that has all the programs that deal with enforcement. So that's all of our food, our air, our water, our housing, and our plumbing division. We have a laboratory as well. We also have a bureau that deals with chronic disease prevention, and we do have several clinics. We have a sexual transmitted disease clinic. We have a TB clinic. We do dental programming, a lot of them in the schools to make sure that children have their furnishes and things like that. And we also do immunizations and travel clinic and those kinds of things. And then we have a bureau that does all of our administrative work. We have a legal department, and we do emergency preparedness in another bureau, and a lot of policy work. You heard about some of the recent policies that we're talking about. And then I think those, and then we have our Bureau of Epidemiology, which is basically all of our data. So there's 5 bureaus right now, but they are fairly diverse in terms of the things that we do.
Wow. I mean, to go from epidemiology to actual field study, you're really all over the place.
Everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say so.
Wow. And by the way, I wanted to say, feel free to chime in.
Oh, no,
you know,
Dr. Hacker's doing a great job.
If you have questions you want to ask or things you want to add.
You hit the 2 top button issues right now.
Yeah,
Because,
absolutely.
and, you know, a lot of what happens in public health, unfortunately, is driven by what's going on in the media, right? So the issues in Flint, Michigan, while we really feel for Flint, Michigan, you know, lead was not really considered as big a problem. It was much more a problem in the 70s. And one of the biggest things that ever happened to decrease the amount of lead was that we got lead out of gasoline. And that happened in the 70s. So, you know, between paint and lead, we really made some big national policy public health changes that made a big difference. But, you know, things got better. And in general, the lead levels in children went down. The number of children who were poisoned went down. And then we forget about these things. And so in public health, if we do a good job, it usually means less money.
Right.
And then the problem pops up again and people remember it. And now there's a flurry of activity. So a lot of the things that we have to deal with are often stimulated because there was a media event or something like that went off. We are really in the business of prevention and trying to be proactive.
Right.
And that's what we would like to be doing more of. And we do have a very extensive plan for Healthier Allegheny. We got over 80 organizations together to work with us. We did 14 community meetings in all of our districts. We did one in Moon for this district, and pulled all of that information together to come up with 5 areas that we really wanted to pursue. And we are focusing on that. We have regular work groups that meet on that. We've asked all of our partnering organizations to see themselves in that plan and to see what they can do to actually help to propel those forward, because we can't do it by ourselves. And then these other things tend to pop up, and we still have to deal with those as well. We're really compelled to act as well.
Okay, so let's go from preventative to reactive, right? Because for whatever reason, in my mind, I think health department, I think complaints, right? Let me start by asking, what are things that one might be filing a complaint about with your agency?
Sure. So the big ones that we tend to see is air quality. If people, they don't like a smell or something like that, they will complain to us about that. And there also is a very large advocacy community out there around environmental health issues, and they're very activated so that we get a lot of those complaints. Then we get housing complaints. Someone feels that there's an abandoned home, which may present a public health issue. You know, they see that the home has no heat or raw sewage or something like that. We might get a complaint. Sometimes it's a little hard because sometimes they are neighbor complaints. You know, one neighbor doesn't like the other neighbor, and we have to investigate to find out what's going on. We get restaurant complaints, and a consumer goes to a restaurant, they come home, they get sick. They think it might be from something that they ate. We get those complaints, and then we have to go after those. Some of the complaints we get may not fall in our jurisdiction, and then we're really faced with trying to make sure, for example, we don't do animal control, but we often will get complaints about rats and things like that. And then we have to work with all of the jurisdictions, because some of the things that are really coming to us may in fact be things that they have to deal with. We might get a complaint about something that happens in a hospital or something that happens in a doctor's office. Often that would really be dealt with by the state, because they do all of the regulations regarding healthcare. We may be involved to some extent about that. We may hear about it. We get from schools, people complain because their child has lice, things like that. So it's pretty broad in terms of the kinds of things people complain about. And we are, as you can imagine, fairly complaint driven. A lot of our inspections, like around housing and plumbing and things like that, and food, we do regular inspections in food, but a lot of our activity ends up being because the public says we think there's a problem, and we rely on them in a lot of ways to point us in the right direction.
Right. So then that's the next question is, if somebody has a complaint about air quality or housing or restaurants or some of these areas that you've described as being in your wheelhouse, how do they go about filing that complaint?
They can call our organization. The number is 412-687-ACHD and lodge a complaint, but they can also do it online at our website, which is www.achd.net. And it's all right there. You can see it on the left-hand side, and it'll say, file a food complaint, file a housing complaint, file an air complaint, environmental health complaint, and you can do all that online.
Well, good. I hate to tell you that I'm looking at our map of our county over here, and you can see just the tip of Neville Island popping up there. I can tell you, we as local officials tend to get lots of complaints about air quality coming from Neville Island. So I suspect you might have gotten more than you bargained for after this video, that you get some air quality complaints from.
Well, and things are different because we did have a closure of a very large industry on Neville Island in the Shenango Coke plant, and that was the source of the vast majority of complaints. We do have air monitors that are very close to here in Avalon and right, I think that's the closest one, right?
I think you're right, yeah.
And it's important for our people to know that when we put our monitors up, it has to do with the prevailing winds. So sometimes people feel like, well, I need a monitor right here, but in fact, the most important place to have it is actually where it's put. We put a lot of our energies into those modeling exercises so that we have the monitors in the place where we think we're going to get the highest level of concern. At this point in time, the monitors that serve this area are all totally in compliance with the Environmental Protection Organization and with the Clean Air Acts.
And when did that plant shut down? It was
less than a year ago.
Yeah, it was within the last 6 to 8 months. Yeah.
And have you seen the air quality improve? I mean, it's always been compliant, right?
Yeah. Well, technically, the air was the whole area. We've had a lot less odor complaints.
Right.
One of the problems with odor complaints is that usually it's caused by something called H2S, which is the human nose can detect it at a very, very, very low level. And they're also fleeting, so that makes it very difficult to investigate them. They tend to be nuisance. There isn't a really good way of measuring a smell. As you can imagine, it has to do with like, how strong was the smell? Did it make your eyes water? Did it, was it just a little smell? It becomes really tough to follow up on those things, particularly if the levels in the monitors are normal. I know with Shenango, we put a lot of energy into monitoring that. And also we even had a camera on Shenango that was looking at emissions, all those types of things. So, but is it a challenge? It is a challenge. And our air quality has been progressively getting better.
Good.
Which is, I think, as a public health official, we don't have that success in everything we do. The problem is we do have a lot of industries in our region. And as a result, and we also have the topography, which makes it very easy for things to collect in the valleys. And between those two, we still remain as one of the top areas with emissions. And that's of great concern to all of us. And we are working our hardest to keep improving the air and be within the regulations of the Environmental Protection Agency. So, that is one of the areas, that we are challenged by.
I think one issue that Dr. Hacker, if I can, that's going to be, people are going to be reading a lot about in the next few weeks, the next few months, will be vaping. And it's something we were talking a little bit about offline. It's something that was just passed by your health board earlier this week. And maybe if you can just provide some education for all of us, but also for everyone watching, just about that legislation that'll be coming to county council, coming to us as a county government soon, and maybe just an overview of what vaping is, even for folks that might not know.
So first of all, electronic cigarettes and vaping is pretty new, and it's kind of an industry that's just literally exploded. I mean, just huge numbers of new shops have opened. I think we have over 90 shops at least. If you go on Yelp and find out how many are in our county, and there's probably a new one opening every day. What electronic cigarettes are is that they are a little mechanical mechanism in which you put oil in them with a battery. It heats it up and then you can inhale it. And the same is pretty much true for vaping, although the mechanisms look a little bit different. So you may see people with a handheld device that's fairly large. In a vape store, you can actually try out different oils. You can try out different tastes. Often you'll hear them called bubblegum flavor or banana flavor, all these other kinds of things. One of the biggest challenges is that there's a lot of variability in the product. So you could get an e-cigarette which generally has nicotine in it. You could get vaping that doesn't. There are experiences of different chemicals in some of these things. Some of the chemicals that are used in the oils may be safe to eat, but have never been proven safe to inhale. So a lot of work going on nationally to understand the concerns that people have about the safety of these devices. We are concerned only because basically they aren't 100% safe. There is evidence that they are probably safer than cigarettes for the individual who is smoking them. But in terms of having them in public spaces, we would like to exclude them from the same places where you cannot smoke indoors. And so the current policy—
Let me hear that again. We would like to exclude them from the same places where smoking is prohibited.
Correct.
Okay.
But I want to caveat indoors, because there are some places outdoors that municipalities, for example, have excluded smoking in their parks, and this would not cover that. So this would cover everything that the Clean Indoor Air Act in Pennsylvania currently covers. So basically,
so it's county legislation, it's countywide, but it's piggybacking on state law.
What it's essentially doing is mimicking the state law,
Gotcha.
but now expanding it to include e-cigarettes and vaping.
Okay.
If that makes sense. Am I making that
Sure.
clear?
Does that mean that the same places that have exclusions, so certain bars that have an exclusion under the smoking law would have the same exclusion under the vaping law?
Yes.
Okay.
So we are doing our best to just mimic that law completely. So if you, people may know that there are many exemptions to the Clean Indoor Air Act. You can smoke in a bar where they have less than, I think it's 20%. I'm not sure the exact number of the revenue in food.
Right.
You can smoke in the casinos, and you can smoke in clubs, and those exemptions would remain. We are also actually another exemption that would be slightly new is that you could vape in shops that are vape shops, similar to the way that you can smoke in a cigarette vendor shop, which is also part of the cleanup. So we're just trying to mimic that exactly. We are not banning vaping. We are not banning e-cigarettes. We're just saying that you can't do it in the areas where you cannot smoke indoors.
And so where does that legislation stand?
So it just passed, yeah.
Literally just passed it
Board.
Wednesday at the Board of Health. That was a unanimous vote. And now it'll go to county council, and I'm not sure exactly when that'll happen. And then they'll have to vote on it before it goes into.
Yeah, it goes from the Board of Health and it comes to the Health and Human Services Committee. So we had a Health and Human Services Committee actually meeting later that night. It wasn't on the agenda for that night because it had just passed earlier in the day. So it'll probably come up at our next, or two from now, Health and Human Services Committee. Things come out of committee either with a positive recommendation or not, no recommendation at all. Then they come to the full body.
Okay.
So I do want to mention a couple of things because I'm not sure people understand this. So one thing is that we are concerned about any toxins, obviously, that would be in the vapor that might affect people who don't smoke, obviously, and are not doing that kind of stuff. And that's the idea of having this indoor ban on it. The second thing, though, is we are seeing young people, children, adolescents in particular, start to take up this habit now who would never have smoked at all. And we are concerned that particularly by getting addicted to nicotine very early on, it's a gateway potentially to cigarette smoking. And then the third thing is that we're very concerned about the changes in the way we now see cigarettes. People are used to being in an environment that says no smoking, and there's no smoking. So we really would like to keep it that way. We don't want to go backwards at all. And, you know, particularly for children, we really don't think they ought to be exposed in indoor places to the vape.
Gotcha.
And I think one of the misnomers is that a lot of people say, well, it's just vapor, it's just water vapor, but that's actually not accurate. There are other things within that vapor.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, do you want to say something else?
We gotta touch on Live Well.
I was just going to say. I was just going to say. Let's pivot
County,
to Live Well. And let me set the background for this. Aleppo residents probably recall that a couple months ago, September, a slew of the commissioners and Gwen Patterson, our manager, went to a convention at Seven Springs, and Dr. Hacker was one of the presenters there, and we talked about this Live Well campaign. And Gwen and I both made a little note that said, look more into Live Well. And we came back and we said, let's talk more about Live Well. And we haven't done anything with it. So tell us.
It's only November 3rd or 4th now. You're okay.
I know,
but
but start by telling us what Live Well is.
So the Live Well campaign is really an effort to improve the health of our county residents. And when I got here about now 3 years ago, one of the first things that the executive said to me was, oh, let's walk in every single 130 municipalities. Well, that grew into the Live Well campaign. There are actually 3 behaviors that contribute to the major chronic diseases and the vast majority of our mortality here in the county. And those behaviors are cigarette smoking, obesity, and physical inactivity. If we could really make a dent in those 3 things, we'd have a really big impact on diabetes, on cancers, on heart disease, and on other kinds of pulmonary problems. So while we just talked a lot about the air, the fact of the matter is the risk of cancer and heart disease and things like that from smoking is exponentially bigger than any of your risk from the air. And I'm not sure people really understand that. And we still have some pretty high smoking rates in our county. When I got here, they were like 24% of our population was still smoking. So we have work to do in that area. The Live Well campaign decided to focus specifically on what we could do with our communities. What could we do to surround our populations with healthy options? So we've been on a mission to get 130 municipalities to all become Live Well. And what that means is that an individual community needs to commit to doing what we call evidence-based practices to improve the health of their residents. And those could be things like various smoking issues, what we just talked about, making your park smoke free, for example, like even extending in your zoning, you know, where your municipal buildings and where you can smoke around them, things like that, or offering community member cessation options, things like that. But it also includes various trails and bike routes and things like that that you can do to enhance the physical activity. But it could be wellness fairs, it could be offering yoga in the park. We give you a lot of options.
Okay, so
Probably are already meeting criteria.
Well, I don't know, and I don't want to put you on the spot here, but let's talk specifically Aleppo, right? Aleppo has no parks. 1,900 residents. We have a park in the long-term plan, but there's no park. So what are steps that we take to get this Live Well certification? It's a certification, right? What are steps that we take to get Live Well certified?
So all you have to do is really like 3 different options.
Okay.
And I didn't bring all of the criteria here.
Like I said, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
But you know, I don't know enough about Aleppo specifically to know what kind of activities you're doing. But are you doing? Do you have a walking group?
Okay. No.
Some community, you know, these are the kind of things. Like, you know, some people are doing, especially since you don't have a park, they're creating maps of safe walking routes. You know, some of the communities have done things like create maps for school children to walk to school, because a lot of what we see in particularly in the non-urban area, is no sidewalks and everybody's driving, right? And so they don't get out of their car. And that makes it a little difficult to get physical activity. So what are some of the activities that a municipal government can really start to think about that can expand that? It could be using, I don't know if you guys have heard about the open streets. So what some communities have done is They've gotten a little bit of dollars from various grant opportunities, and they've taken their downtown area on Sunday morning and they've closed it off. And then they've had all kinds of activities going on in that area, which could include games, skateboarding, as I said, yoga. A lot of people like yoga. All kinds of things, vendors out there, healthy eating, and that really brings the community together, and it gives you a nice place to be able to get some walking in, even though you're in a place that doesn't necessarily have a lot of green space.
Right.
You actually have a lot of green space. It's just not a park.
We have a lot of green space. It's just covered with trees and hills.
Yeah, there might be ways to think about that.
I think that's the same things that we would think about doing at the Aleppo kickoff for this event, where Dr. Hacker would come out. We'd announce it. You and the commissioners would be there, Gwen and the township staff. The same things that we would think about doing at a kickoff, like we've done in North Fayette. We did a walk together, Ross and Westview. We did a trivia game, but there was also a wellness fair going on. So any of those kind of things that maybe we would think at doing at the kickoff would be great things to just be doing on a regular basis if it's already going on in Aleppo.
I think a lot of the municipalities also are thinking about the people who work for them and how they also enhance. I think Swickley, your neighbor, actually got them all Fitbits.
Okay.
I'm not suggesting that, but they're really
That's a good
trying to
example,
come up
though.
with strategies. I know.
Okay, all right.
But I think there are lots of strategies that you can do. I was just in Wilkinsburg yesterday. Wilkinsburg they have a farmer's market where they sell fresh fruits and vegetables. They have, they've done some of those walking paths with their residents. They put all of this information on their websites about where you can go to do health and wellness kinds of activities. So one of the things we've seen is we have seen communities start to do this regardless of whether they're considered rich or poor, whether they're diverse or not diverse. And what we're really trying to push is a movement, which is really about changing the way that we see health and wellness. We're also looking at restaurants becoming live well restaurants, and that means I'm not asking them to get rid of French fries, which I would love to get rid of, but asking them to have healthy options, right? So if you go in and you see that they have a live well sticker on the restaurant, that you can ask for low-cal salad dressing, that you can ask for half portion sizes and take half of it home, that you can get 2% milk instead of whole milk, that you can get fresh fruits and vegetables available to you instead of mashed potatoes. And so making those options available more and more. We're also looking at live well workplaces. So, if you have a large number of people working for you, what are you doing to improve the health? That's a captive audience. Right. What are you doing? What's in your vending machines? That was another one, right? I don't know if you have vending machines, but what's
Don't look on your way out.
But even something like that, to change the policies around what's in the vending machine, which I know might be challenging, but those are some of the really simple steps that we really believe make a difference. Because what we know is that definitely all of these types of things take an individual decision. However, it's awfully hard to make that decision when everything around you goes in the opposite direction. Right. On the flip side, when everything around you, we tend to like to conform. So when everything around you is moving in a healthy direction, your likelihood to move in that direction is going to be higher. And we know this from looking at people in certain communities across the nation. Right. I was just in Denver, and it's kind of amazing. Everybody's riding their bikes. They've now got fabulous new public transportation to the airport, which was incredible. If you were in Denver, literally a decade ago, it was completely different. Yeah. Right? And I think downtown Pittsburgh is starting to look more and more like that. We're certainly getting a change in our demographics in terms of the people moving in. But I really do think that if we can stimulate this at every municipality, that helps us get to where we want to go. Okay, so give me a roadmap. It's me and it's Gwen, right? Tell us, you leave here. What do we do? What's our first step? What's our first action item? I think your first action is go to our website and see the criteria to become a live well community. Okay. And then figure out if you're doing things within that already. Right. Fantastic. Those count. Okay. If you're not, are there simple things that you can do to meet that criteria? And is there somebody we can talk to that can help us do a little bit more of an individual assessment? Absolutely. And if you want to just drop me an email. Okay. You now have my email. I do. Yeah. Okay. I'm happy to connect. Okay. I'm going to do that. We're going to follow up on that for sure. Okay. Well, thanks very much. So let's pivot yet again here and talk to Kurt Emmerling, Deputy Administrator of the Area Agency on Aging.
That was again perfect.
Thanks. I appreciate that. So obviously the You know, the kicker with Aleppo here is that we are home to the Masonic Village, and I had to look it up online because I know there's such this specificity in terms of the different levels of nursing home and skilled living. And I think the best way for me to say it is it's the Masonic Village retirement community, because I think they've got a whole slew of different levels. But same question that I've been asking to everybody: what is it that Allegheny County has to offer our very large elderly population in Aleppo?
Well, I think the one thing that most people don't realize is the diversity of available services. As soon as you are a resident of Pennsylvania, you walked into the richest area in the country for senior services. And that is simply because of one thing, that is the Pennsylvania Lottery. The Pennsylvania Lottery devotes its funds exclusively to the benefit of senior citizens. There is no other state that does that. And as a result of that, we have services that if you cross the border into West Virginia, Ohio, New York, Virginia, you don't see things even close. So when someone says what's available, a stunning variety of things are available. And I think probably one of the best things to say or to mention about the entire aging system is that most people are unaware of those services because most of, if not exclusively, all the dollars are devoted to the services themselves and not to advertising those services. So it's a wonderful thing that you're doing this, because this is one of the ways that residents and individuals within any township or community can find out about those services. So the one thing I would say is, number one, call us. We've made it simple. In the aging world, the mission of aging is to allow people to devote themselves to choice. They can choose themselves what to do, when and how to do it, and that we support that 100% so that those individuals can make choices for the rest of their life that they feel solid about and their family also agrees with or at least supports. It used to be in the aging world that choice was not present. People reached a certain age and people made decisions for them or said, you know, this is what's going to happen to you. And that is certainly not true of the aging world now. In fact, our mission, and some people hesitate to call us because they're afraid, is that, you know, people in aging, what they really do is they put you into circumstances or residences or places where you don't want to live. And I've made a choice to live in this particular area, whether it's Masonic Village or whether it's an apartment or a community or something like that. And we are totally not about that. Our services are designed to support you through your choice, and you will find us exceedingly friendly in that ability. Let me give an example, perhaps, of that. Let's say there is a person who is living in a community similar to Masonic Village or Masonic Village itself. And let's say that in that system, which is complex, they all are, that the person runs into some difficulty that they don't know how to deal with. Billing issues. The quality of their food or experience or access to services or the ability to get out and do some of the things that we've been talking about, healthy behaviors and so on. And they feel, well, maybe I'm a little bit restricted here. I don't understand what that is, or I was told X, Y, or Z, and I don't understand how that's going to impact me. Well, we have a group of people. They're recognized as state best practice, and they have a great name. The name literally is given to them is the Ombudsman. And when you say the word Ombudsman, you're actually speaking Swedish, which is marvelous, because I had an opportunity to talk to someone who is Swedish, and I says, how do you pronounce this exactly? They give it this beautiful little umlaut, which is like Ombudsman, which I can't really definitely say. But the reality is it means people's champion or advocate. And we have people. This is an absolutely free service to individuals within the community. They can call, and I'm going to give that number. It's called the Senior Line. It's a one-stop number. All the services that I'm talking about touch that one number. You just make one call and you're connected to a person who's actually an expert in referring individuals to different levels of service. They could get a person connected to an ombudsman. The ombudsman will come out and visit you. They'll call you first, have a discussion with you, talk about it. And the beauty of the ombudsman program is it's what we call person-directed. So you tell the ombudsman what you want. And it's totally confidential, completely. As a matter of fact, they will go out of their way so that no one knows that report is. So if you had a complaint about your access to services or your bill or whatever it might be, and you said, well, you know, if I do this, they're going to know it's me that said it. And then who knows what will happen? I'm afraid of the consequences. The ombudsman will visit 25 other people that day just to make it not obvious who they went and talked to. And at that point, what they'll end up doing is that they will advocate for that person. What they do first is teach the person advocacy skills, because we're always our own best advocates. But if the person is in a position in their life developmentally where they're not able to advocate for themselves, or it's a family member that's unable to advocate, we will advocate for them. And they are so good at this, and the resolution is so high that they run mediation groups. We have self-directed types of services where we encourage people to learn advocacy skills, build councils at these communities so that they can learn the same skill sets and sort of duplicate them for themselves, and they can bring in those advocacy needs and eliminate the problems on their own. So it really truly is community living at its best. And that service is of no cost. The dollars that are used in the Pennsylvania lottery pay for this.
Wow.
So we always tell people, kind of in a lighthearted but truthful way, play the lottery, it pays for our services. So it is the truth, and that is one of the benefits of it. So certainly we have the ombudsman.
Okay, so I mean, that's a program I got to say I've never heard of. It sounds awesome. I've got parents who, mom and dad, believe me, I'm not calling about you tomorrow, but they're in their early 70s.
Yes.
Is that a number I can call as well and try to get help dealing with them?
That's a great introduction to a point that many people are not aware of. When you talk about aging, people automatically think, well, it's only for the elderly. And in Pennsylvania, it's fairly liberal. It's 60 and older. That's what the age of identification. You become eligible for services at 60. But aging is not just about the individual person. That's gone away over the last decade. We recognize it's about the family. It's about caregivers. It's about the community. It's about the people who are involved in elder care. It's all of those people. So when someone says, I have an issue with aging, we receive phone calls from everyone, from individuals in government, healthcare, family members, concerned individuals, people who want to report a neighbor or a friend that they don't think is doing well. All of these things come into the senior line, and we're able to act on them. And one of the biggest pieces of that, and I'm glad you mentioned this, is caregiver stress and burnout. People who live in someplace like Masonic Village, for example, will assume, maybe not correctly, that aging services are not for them because their needs might be taken care of due to decisions that they made as far as how they're going to retire and live the rest of their lives. But many of them don't realize that they are caregivers themselves. And we recognize in Pennsylvania that there are billions of dollars worth of care that take place from the caregivers that people don't realize are not a part of the formal level of caregiving that we would say are home and community-based types of work. And so what we do is we support the caregivers. We recognize psychologically it is stressful to take care of someone who is aging and becoming more infirm. And the majority of people in our services are 85 or older. It's actually about 83 is where we get the majority of people. And at that point, many individuals, especially those in relationships, are caretaking or caregiving to a spouse or a partner or someone along those lines, and they don't realize the incredible stress that brings into their lives. We offer both services and support, both emotionally, psychologically. We have about 9 months to a year of caregiving before we completely burn out and fry. Literally. And so what we do is we try to mitigate that and connect them to services and teach them healthy practices. We arrange for respite care in many cases, or at least talk to them about the available services they may not be aware of for those types of circumstances, and so on. So there's a huge variety. And the message that I would have for people listening to this is, if you don't call us, you will never know.
Mm-hmm.
There is no such thing as a bad
Yeah.
question. Our people at the front desk are the most marvelous trained people, and I have never worked for a place where retention of employees is like what it is where I work.
That's great.
I'm there 15 years. I'm considered to be nothing for 15 years. We have people on the senior line been working there 25, 30 years, and they know their stuff. So that when someone calls and says, what about this? They are able to tell them where and how to deal with it.
Okay, so let me ask a question that may come off somewhat insensitive, but Aleppo, and maybe not so much Aleppo as the greater Sewickley area, obviously has a reputation of being affluent and having few people who have means issues.
Yes.
And I would venture to guess that a large number of people around this area would say, well, that's not a number for me to call because it's only for folks that have means. I mean, it always feels to me as if the distinction between aging and means tested needs services gets blurred. So my question, succinctly said, is it something that people who are not indigent can still call a bank.
Absolutely. And I don't think that's an insensitive question, because that is a common conversation around the table of people who work in aging on almost a weekly basis. People have a perception. It's not true. It's a myth that aging services are for those with no income or are very, very poor or are in circumstances where they're maybe just moments away from losing their home or something like that. Actually, that's not true. Western Pennsylvania has more middle and upper middle class older adults than any area within this state. And it is not unusual for us to find people who have assets, who have planned well for their retirements, who are in circumstances that are very stable, but still fall into situations where they need to ask advice or thoughts. Think about it for a moment. If you're a person of some means, what is most likely going to run into you other than a physical issue that you might want to call about or talk about? And that is potentially you become attractive, unfortunately, to people who wish to exploit and utilize those financial resources for themselves.
Right.
And we have an entire division of aging called Older Adult Protective Services that deals with individuals 60 and older who potentially are at risk of or potentially being abused. And that's another one of the problems is people say, oh, well, I'm not being hit. I'm not being screamed at. I'm not being hurt in that way. But the truth is that the two major areas that we see are self-neglect. A person begins to not realize how well they're taking care of themselves. And we see that that represents more than half of our cases. And then an amazing statistic, financial exploitation is just going up and up and up. If my stock portfolio looked like this, it would be amazing. But it's sad how frequently we see the increase of this. And the saddest part is the people who abuse elderly folks are typically known to that person. And they also happen to be, in many cases, their family. And what we see are daughters-in-law, son-in-laws who use credit cards and may have someone co-sign for something or take out an account in someone else's name or conveniently become somehow a power of attorney where they're able to move dollars away, or they join the bank account of that particular person by using the name and as well. And so it looks very much on the up and up, but what's happening is their resources are being drained. And it is not unusual for us to receive calls from people of some means saying, I lost some money. And when you say, how much money did you lose? The figures are astounding. They are six figures and sometimes even up.
Wow.
And though that doesn't really mean that that is the only cases we have. If you only have $300 in the bank and someone takes it all, that's the same as if you had $1 million and someone took 900,000 of it. So it really is the equivalency of what it is. But we have people in protective services who are experts in we call forensic banking. We have an individual that we hired. She is both an attorney in the state previously, has experience in banking, and she can do what sometimes, admittedly, law enforcement doesn't have the time to do. And that's investigate, look into the records, find out what's going on, take the 3 months that's needed to sort everything out. And I will tell you, in Allegheny County, it is marvelous. We have 2 dedicated district attorneys who deal exclusively with aging related issues. And they take these cases, they work with our people, and I don't have the statistic in front of me, but I know the conviction rate for that is amazing. Because when you have an elderly person who comes into a court that says, I've been financially abused, and someone is standing there, most people realize that a jury is going to look at the person who's older and say, oh my gosh, look what happened to them. And the decision is not going to go well for the person who abused them. So we have a very high either settlement immediately or a conviction afterwards. But that service is available. People don't realize that's there. Even if you're concerned about someone else, even within your community, whether it be assisted living or nursing or just within the community itself, and you haven't seen them for a while, or you're seeing that they're not functioning the way that they need to be, you can always have us come out and do a type of an evaluation of that person just to see if they're okay.
And I take it that the same confidentiality that you talked about in the nursing home setting would apply here as well. So if you have a concern about a loved one and maybe that's a family relationship that's going on, your agency is a good first point of contact for those issues.
And for those who are worried that this is just sort of voice about confidentiality and privacy, it is the law. And so when someone says, I'm making a protective services report or doing something along those lines, no one can find out who made that report. The only person who's permitted to do that is a judge during an active court who demands to see it. And we almost never have that happen. So that's actually that is very, very protected. So confidentiality is huge because we know people won't report if they feel that they're vulnerable,
Right.
or that there'll be repercussions. So that's one of the things that we do. So there's advocacy, there's protection, and there's also knowledge of those things. And we're happy to come into the community and also train people and say, look for these things. Pay attention to this kind of behavior. This is an indication of this form of abuse potentially, or be able to do that. And that's something that individuals don't realize is we do a lot of community work and conversation. We have a speakers bureau that goes out and talks to people, and by request we'll come and we'll make it to the level of whatever someone wants to know. So if it's individuals in the community, or it's someone with in an assisted living type of situation, we'll gladly come out and have that conversation.
Okay, so that's a great segue. Let me spin off of the population of Aleppo that's living in Masonic Village, and let me sort of start to look about folks who have decided to age at home.
Yes,
because Aleppo also has a significant community in that category as well. So if I'm living and I see my next door neighbor is an elderly person, and maybe I'm getting a little concerned, as you said, they're not taking care of themselves. A welfare check, that's something that I would do through your agency?
Well, we ourselves do not handle that's actually a separate department,
Okay.
Department of Human Services, which is the state kind of overreaching piece of it. And they handle the financial components and welfare and so on. And we deal more with the services around a person. So let's say that they saw a lady next door who's in her 80s, her husband passed 2 years ago, and they've noticed that she's having less and less contact with the community and doesn't seem to talk as much or so on. Definitely can call us. We will do so with great discretion and respect. We will either visit or call or say, hi, we're from so-and-so. Of course, if the person's capacitated and says, as we've talked about capacity, I don't want to see you, we won't force that issue, but we will pay attention to it. We're not there to drive people or make them feel uncomfortable. But the reality is that sometimes individuals just don't know what those services are. So we have a service called Options, and the state is the one that gives us the name of that service. And that is usually for people who are, while not extremely frail or in dire financial need, it's literally for anyone. You can be at any income level and just need some help, and Option services could potentially be there for you. And what are some of those services? Well, someone to assist you with some light housekeeping, for example, which is very popular for someone, because you look and the person says, well, look at my house, look at the way that it is, look at my bathroom, look at my kitchen. I don't even know if this is healthy to live like this, because I just don't have the ability to bend over, do these kinds of things. Wouldn't it be great if someone could come in and assist? The person says, I can't get dressed like I used to. I have trouble putting on my shoes, so I always wear slippers or socks around the house. And we realize that falls are such a significant issue with elders that we can have a person who can assist them or give them adaptive devices or assistance in that process. And that is marvelous as well. And certainly we look out for their nutrition, because we know definitely for health, if you eat incorrectly or eat only things that are not going to help you along the lines of, sort of your long-term goals or anything like that for your own health, we'll coach and counsel and assist people and even arrange for meals to be a part of their lives if they want. As a matter of fact, from my understanding, we deliver more than 1 million meals in the Allegheny County area on a basis. So, and those meals are sometimes very specific, low sodium or a certain kind of diet and so on. So it's amazing what is available. And again, it goes down to that, ask us, we'll tell you.
Right.
And you can hear some of the, just in seeing the looks of folks here, it's like, I didn't realize all these services are there. It's incredible.
Yeah.
There's volunteer opportunities. We can train people to become advocates for others in the community. We have senior training and employment where someone says, well, I've always wanted to get into that computer stuff and always wanted to really learn that, but I'm embarrassed to ask somebody. Ask us. We might even get you a job after. So it's pretty awesome what the services are there and how to assist someone. But the real entrance is I need to call, and I need to call the senior line to be able to do that.
Okay, so we deal with building permits here.
Yeah.
One of the frequent calls that we get are questions about home modifications for seniors.
Yes.
Building ramps. Is that sort of something in your wheelhouse? Or?
It is, and that is a common request. When the department, when the Area Agency on Aging becomes involved with someone, they typically will go out to their home to see it for themselves, because that's the best way to do so. And we have trained social workers or nurses who go into those homes. They have the typical tablet, laptop type of thing, and they go through a list of questions. And one of the things that they do is they look around the home and they say, you know, I've noticed you're having a little bit of trouble walking or moving. Do you have trouble using your shower, for example? Because I notice it's a tub and it has a really high step over, and the person says, well, I'll tell you the truth, I haven't really had the ability to take a shower for quite some time now, and it would be great if I was able to. Well, in looking at their resources and income and process, we can essentially tell them, this is what we can do for you. And yes, home modifications are common. Ramps, whether rented or permanently installed, and that's a newer thing where rented facilities are brought in at a much cheaper cost, where someone can adapt a home in that way. Or a modification to a bathroom to have one of those wonderful bathroom showers that literally pull up the tub, move aside, someone gets in and does that. And if there's any advice to tell someone who is in a situation where they're thinking and saying, well, I'm 70 years old now, what's going to happen to me when I'm in my mid 80s? Now's the time to talk to us about what you might want to think about for your future, so that maybe it isn't an emergency when you get to the point where you can't do that, which is, you know, we're comfortable dealing with that and deal with it a lot, but certainly home modifications and alterations, whether it be grab bars or ramps or anything like that, are things that we do.
Okay, how about transportation? And I didn't give Councilman Baker the razzing that I wanted to about the Port Authority bus not going into Pittsburgh anymore. That's a totally different conversation. Aleppo, no transportation. There's no public transportation that touches Aleppo. Obviously, Sewickley is our closest shopping center. It's not walkable. So what about transportation?
Okay. Transportation in and of itself is kind of its own little separate niche within the world of aging. We have connections to it. We assist people if they have problems with it, but we definitely can help people make arrangements to get it. Older adult transportation and so on is what people will say is, how do I get to my doctor's appointment? I'm not driving as well as I should, or I just came from my doctor who told me I shouldn't be driving, and so I don't want to. If they make the phone call, we'll arrange and assist for them to do that. Many of the services that surround transportation have changed a little bit. They used to have paper tickets and all kinds of unusual things that they did. It's gone to an electronic purse type of circumstance where literally dollars are banked, so that when you call them, you don't have to worry about those kind of things. And our care management staff and the folks who work with individuals can certainly help and talk with them about setting those services up. And we're more than happy to do that, including resolving some complaints, because once in a while we do hear circumstances where someone says, well, you do know how long I was at the doctor's before my transportation person showed up. And we recognize that and do try to work very effectively with the providers of those services to be able to do that. But if someone says, I don't know how to get transportation, definitely call us. We will work with them to help arrange that, or at least to discover what is available, because some people are unaware of those resources.
Right. Okay, we talked about people who are aging at home. We talked about people who are in our Masonic Village facility. What about the transition between the two? If a family decides that it's time for mom or dad to go to a different facility or go to a facility to start with, is your agency somebody that we can?
Absolutely.
That seems to be the common answer.
Right.
Talk to Kurt for everything.
Well, you know, it's sadly, people get very excited when they hear this, because they say, I didn't realize it. And it's the truth. You know, do I want our resources to disappear because everyone has used them? Well, in a way, because that would offer opportunity to have even more dollars put towards those services for seniors. So when someone says, well, I'm at a point in my life where I'm not sure about where I should be, and that question is a powerful question. But I will say this, the goal of the Area Agency on Aging is to allow a person to age in place as long as it is feasible and safe. I can say this, I want to say it very carefully. A goal is to allow someone to go through their entire life and development and pass away in the circumstance in which they want it to be. I am amazed, since my time at Aging, how many thousands of older adults have successfully been able to stay in a home when people said there's no way that could ever happen. They definitely need an institutionalized environment in which to do this. We just don't see this. And we're just not seeing that to be true anymore. Services can be arranged at levels that are both cost effective and attentive enough in a home environment to keep people at home for extremely long durations. Only the most extreme cases can that not be. And that's, of course, in concert with a physician and advice from medical professionals who tell us, well, that's well and good that you want to do that, but it really might be better if you had a more intensive service area. But a lot of our services are designed to keep people there, including a wonderful one that I didn't mention called nursing home transition, where someone, let's say they were at a private home and their doctor says, well, I have some news for you. You have to have a surgery. You're definitely able, you're going to recover, but it's going to take you a while to recover. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to step you down into a nursing facility where you can rehab afterwards. It may take you 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and they go there and they discover that during that 6 or 8 weeks, something happened, the surgery had a complication or so on. Maybe they developed pneumonia or something like that and ended up there 3 months. Well, they weren't able to pay for their apartment, their townhome, their house, the way that they wanted to. Changes occurred where it wasn't as easy to come back. Or maybe they were going to return to that home and it really wasn't convenient for them because the access was not there. The nursing home transition team is designed to come in and talk to them and say, this is what we're going to do to make that happen, because I know you want to go home. And they are amazing people. I mean, we have very dedicated staff, but the NHT people are definitely the greatest advocates I think I potentially have seen. Wow. And they go after what a person wants. And they say, I want to be able to do this for you. If there is any way for you to return home, I will find that way. So services can be incredibly intense for someone so that they can still enjoy the familiarity of the home environment, get the things that they need, and actually, to a larger extent, and being careful in saying it, avoid opportunities for other people to take advantage of them, because we know the safest place for you always is your home.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay, I need to improve my serve in paddle tennis. Can your agency help me with that? I just wanted you to say no to something. Come on.
That's the thing Kurt cannot help you
I
with.
won't say no, but I'll say I don't. But of course, I'm not as familiar with this, but we are involved with the senior games. And we do have a lot of seniors who have incredible talent who have coached younger.
Spins that anyway.
You can spin anything, huh? Good for you.
So,
Okay, so seriously, I'm always looking out for the residents, but I'm always looking out for me too, right? So local elected officials, what can we be doing? What should we be looking for? What is it that you want to tell us?
I think the biggest thing is invite us to your table to talk. There are so many discussions that take place about very important community issues, things that we have talked about here, which are of paramount importance to the community. But sometimes I think social services, human services gets put on a distant shelf because it's designed for emergencies. And what we want to do is we want to talk about prevention, which I am so grateful was mentioned, because that is the way that we're going to do this. All the managed care companies and all the MCOs that deal with healthcare know that that's where things are going to be. That if I can prevent you from getting into a serious circumstance,